Tanager Place and the Meraki Institute of Learning proudly present Together We Rise, a series on capturing the journeys of resilience and well-being based on the Rise, Wellness, and Resilience framework. For those of you who are joining us today for the first time, this show is a series digging deep into the concept of resilience. In this interview series, we are talking to those in the corridor who have exhibited courage and strength in the face of hardship. These individuals are here with us to share their personal story of resilience. We hope this series will inspire hope and possibility in others. Because when we call on our courage and show up in the midst of struggle, we offer a bright place and to not give up. Together we can rise with the means to manage, restore, and grow.
Ben, thank you so much for being here with us and being a part of this show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I'm really fortunate. I grew up in Cedar Rapids. I've spent almost all my life in Linn County or in the surrounding areas. I'm tremendously lucky that Cedar Rapids has always been my home. It's one of the reasons why I became a Linn County Supervisor, was to really just improve the little slice of the universe I call home. And was also very fortunate at a young age to move to New Zealand. And we lived in New Zealand from 1990 to 1994, so I was 10 to 14,
Wow.
Pretty pivotal age.
Yeah.
We moved there because my father worked for MCI, which was a telecommunications firm at the time, and we transferred to New Zealand and came back and went to Washington High School. And I like to say that I spread my wings like a penguin and went to the University of Iowa, and then found my way back into Mount Vernon as a volunteer firefighter, working with children, and now here I am in the last 12 years working as a Linn County Supervisor, and that's at a very, very high level. A complicated person trying to navigate a complex world.
Yeah, but most importantly, you're a dad, you are a husband, and you have this humanness element of you that allows you to connect in this little slice of heaven and make a difference. Ben, you and I got to connect in regards to pieces of your story, and you've been open to the community about your story and your struggle at times and your experience with adversity and mental health. And also, though, have been able to cultivate wellness and resilience. And so tell me a little bit about your journey and how you've arrived to this man sitting in front of me today.
If they know me at all, it might be my position. And I wanted to open up to the public several years ago on the 5th anniversary of the date in which I became sober from alcohol, to write a guest editorial, really documenting that experience of being in recovery, and as well as having a major depression. So I'm one of 10 million Americans that have a co-occurring disorder, which is a mental illness with a substance use disorder. And it was on the 5th anniversary that I felt a real need to be open and share that story, because it is very much part of the human condition and experience. And when I got into this job as a supervisor, I really it took me a while to find my place. And it wasn't until we started regionalizing mental health that I really found my niche. And then really sort of discovered through my own journey that I have undiagnosed issues that required medication. And when that happened, life changed. It wasn't overnight. There was a lot of steps. There was a lot of challenges and opportunities that presented itself. But my reason for being open is to, 1, normalize it. 2, lend a voice to those who might not feel that they can be open about their struggles with brain health or addiction. And 3, just really create a safe space and a conversation for the community on what it means to be challenged with brain health issues or addiction. And fortunately, the work at the county, we are often the safety, I call it the safety net for the safety net. We provide the critical social services for people very much like myself, whether it's biological or they find themselves in conditions that are just difficult to navigate, the types of services that help people live a higher quality of life. And I felt a real need and a calling to do so. It was really interesting. My father had just passed away, and so my family was in the midst of this grief, and it was also around the same time as this 5-year anniversary, and I just picked 5 because it was something worthy of celebrating. Similar to someone who has an illness, if they have a clean scan, it's time to celebrate. Even members of my own family or those close to me were a little cautious about sharing this story for the same reasons that people are scared to come forward or admit that they have a problem. They'll be judged harshly, or might change people's views of you. It really was to just normalize. It wasn't for any personal admiration or gain. It was, there is such an issue out there, and if a local elected official can be open and say, this is my journey, these are my struggles, and I'm not unique in this. It's part of the human condition. It's part of the experience, and here it is. I didn't know how it would be received. Of course, you hope it's received well and positive. But the outpouring of support and people who have either begun to share their story or people who have come up to me privately and just said, hey, I have X number of years of sobriety. I just wanted you to know, or thank you. That means the world to me, because it is a very personal struggle for which there is some risk of sharing. But the reward for me has been further dialogue on 2 critical issues that I think if you asked an arena full of people to raise their hands, do you know someone who has brain health challenges, or do you know someone who's had addiction issues? I think most hands would be raised.
Yeah.
So it's something that touches every segment of the population. It was just an experience that I wanted to put out into the world, and I remember when it was published, I started breaking out into a sweat.
Yeah.
I really started to question the decision because I put it out there and it was now out there. And I couldn't retract it, and I wouldn't have. But I remember my first reaction was, oh my goodness, have I made the right decision? And every day since then it has been the right decision, because now we're having further conversation and dialogue about just how normal this is, and that I'm not an outlier, or people who struggle with brain health and addiction issues are not outliers. They're people who are struggling, and it's become my life's work to ensure that there are services and supports accessible to all.
Yeah. Let's dive into some of these pieces, because I think for our listeners, I think it's so important for them to see the journey along the way, because it wasn't an easy journey. And I want to dive in first to that decision, that very brave and courageous decision to go and write what you wrote. What was that experience like for you, thinking of exposing yourself in that way? What were internal dialogues? What was doubt you had? What was fear? What were things that came up for you?
Judgment. That people will see me differently, or that people will think that I made bad decisions. That these are just the sum total of decisions and not the makeup of my brain chemistry.
Yeah.
When you write a piece like that, or you look upon your own journey, you almost have to go back to when you first discovered there was an issue. And for me, it was back, I think in high school, is when things really started to manifest. And it wasn't until really I was 32 where I found the proper medication. And I'd been on several different trials. And on average, it takes, I think, people with brain health issues, 3 different trials of medications to find the right brand, the right dose. I had really discovered sort of all the things that led to me discovering this was brain chemistry. I'll never forget, as long as I live, when I was in the depths of a depression in the mid-2000s, and I couldn't make heads or tails of it. And it was really impacting relationships and just quality of life.
Yeah.
Because I'm on this roller coaster and I can't explain it. I don't know. I have the best life, the greatest upbringing you could ever imagine, and yet I couldn't enjoy things like other people could. And I had every reason to be happy. And I remember my mom saying the most life-altering and life-saving words ever. And she just sat me down and said, what you're going through is a chemical imbalance in your brain. And even saying that now, I get tingles.
Yeah. Because
she was so right. And it was finding the right kind of medicines and therapeutics that helped balance it out.
Yeah.
And I wanted to catalog and put out for people that it's brain chemistry. And that means then, through therapies and medicines or other interventions, that that you can manage this instead of it managing you. You know, my sobriety wasn't easy. I lost a marriage due to it. I lost friendships due to it, not getting sober, but everything leading up to being sober. It really challenged relationships. And I look back over decisions I had made not being sober and didn't like what I was seeing. And since then, it doesn't mean that life becomes exponentially easier or better necessarily when you become sober, but it puts you in a frame of mind where you can look at things honestly.
Yeah.
You can have real dialogue with yourself that you're not trying to mask or justify. I mean, the addiction, it's cunning, it's powerful. It'll make you think things that really aren't true or that aren't in your best interest. And so it's finding a tribe of people that you can lean on, that you can go to say, I'm struggling and I don't know how to make this better, or I just need someone to hear me and listen. I've been lucky to have been connected to a lot of these different tribes throughout my life. The burden wasn't as heavy because I could unload it onto friends. I was a volunteer firefighter, so there was a sense of connection, my colleagues. And I think having that connection and having a plan and understanding that you're not an outlier, you're not a freak, is the recipe to help for change.
You know, such a huge part of this initiative is to highlight the RISE framework and really help people see in real time elements within that framework that helped cultivate a person's wellness and their resilience. And we'll dive into kind of your journey of medication, because I think that's important for viewers to hear. But what I want to pull out too is two elements that you talk about, and that's the essence of relationships and the power of connection and belonging. A lot of times when I think we're struggling with brain health and or substance use, there's this fear of, if I am vulnerable, if I expose myself, if I put it out there, all of the things that might mean, how other people view me, whether I lose respect or, you know, not even being able to be at times honest with ourselves about the struggle, right? And so how did you get over some of those fears and allow yourself to be in a place to call on your village and call on the connections you had?
That's part of the key right there, is understanding that if you can find people or a person, that can often be the difference. And I recognized early on, thankfully, I made the decision to become sober. It wasn't like something, I made a decision where the consequences were such that I had to, you know, that I couldn't come back from it. And so for me, that was easy to look at it, and I also made a deal with myself to give myself grace, to try and go through this without a lot of judgment. It's not better or worse than, this is just how I am, and trying not to put labels on it. That helped immensely. That helped immensely to strip labels and judgment away of myself, because everything that's happening is happening behind the eyes. It's in the head, right? All the voices I'm hearing in terms of the self-talk or the thoughts I'm thinking, the feelings going through. You're not necessarily experiencing that. You might see that in my nonverbal, but everything's happening quietly in my head.
In isolation.
In isolation, so it can be very isolating. And loneliness has profound health consequences for people, and I think it's something that, even if you don't have a mental illness or substance use disorder, you know what it's like to be lonely. And so being able to find trusted advisors, whether it's a therapist, and I'm in therapy, whether it's a group of friends, whether it's a mentor, finding an outlet is can really help crystallize that change and make you feel less lonely. I think for me, part of the mental illness and the substance use disorder stems from being lonely, and the lonelier you get, the deeper you get, the more lonely you get, and you're not getting out of this cycle. And one way to help break that cycle, other than therapies and medicine, is finding networks of people that you can rely on, lean on, or just be able to speak your truth to without judgment.
And really looking at those, you know, we talk about adaptive relationships. I try not to use the word healthy because it's sometimes an absolute, and we are on a spectrum all the time. But how do we have relationships with people who can offer adaptive perspectives or help us with our self-awareness and help us cultivate these pieces that bring us to a more readiness state to start to tackle the really hard part of the journey? One thing that you said that resonates so deep for me, Ben, is this idea of labels. And because we live in a world of absolutes, things are good or things are bad. You know, we struggle to live in this area of gray because our ego states in our brain really love to categorize things. It gives us a sense of safety, but what it also does is also doesn't allow us sometimes to give ourselves grace and self-love and to arrive in the presence of ourselves with no judgment or the presence of others. How did you really start to sort through that, to offer yourself grace?
A lot of it started with introspection. I journal. I didn't do any kind of in or outpatient sort of treatment or go to groups. So I can't speak on what that experience is like, but for me, I went out and when I knew I was struggling, I bought a journal. One, I could catalog my thoughts. Two, I could go back over time and look back and be like, really, that's the thing?
Yeah.
That was that thing I couldn't get out of bed for?
Yeah.
It shows growth. I changed the focus inward, where I first had to be comfortable not using labels in the internal dialogue. I might stay sober the rest of my life, but this is the person I'm trying to become and orient myself in the right way. And I am fortunate that I have friends that supported me all throughout the journey. Clearly had family members that understood what it meant to have brain health issues and addiction. I feel very fortunate that that's part of my story and journey. It would be a Mount Everest type of climb if those opportunities weren't there, and I felt lonely and disconnected and didn't feel like I had anyone who understood what I was going through. And that's why that connection piece is, I don't know if it's foundational to the RISE model, but for my sobriety it was, for my well-being. And it would be even if I didn't have those two labels that I've given myself or that society has given me, that the power of connection is so fundamental to who we are.
One of the things that really resonates for me is this idea that when you then shared your story, the level of meaning and purpose that returned back to your life in order to allow kind of your voice to possibly build a bridge for others to use their voice. And how, rather than saying like, why did I have to deal with these hard things, instead saying, how can I now live a life and leave a legacy where what I had to experience can give back to the world in a bigger way. Tell me what meaning that has held for you.
Like I said, I didn't do it to get admiration or a pat on the back. It was to lend a voice, to lend a face to an issue that affects so many people. I am profoundly grateful that I chose to do that editorial, or at least be open with it. I'm open with it on social media. I'm forever grateful that I sort of didn't listen to the voices, the ego, the labels, and just say, here it is, and here I am, and let me speak this truth. And however it unfolds for other people, it's just been an exciting journey to see how that's impacted people. And I know people who have been now public with their stories on social media, or if they have an anniversary, other people have written about their struggles. It's been integral into a lot of the work that I do with the Mental Health Access Center, or ensuring that there's access to services for people in crisis. It's deepened my life just by being able to facilitate those conversations. And on one hand, feeling less alone, but more importantly, helping others feel less alone. And for that, I hope that editorial has had some impact.
Yeah, and one of the things that it makes me think about when you talk about supports is that the supports you needed and the support that offered wasn't people who needed to help you fix something or had to save you. It was people who showed up and just held space with you and said, I love you for you, and let me know how I can help along the journey.
Yeah, because oftentimes the people I'm surrounded with, they don't have addiction in their family. They may not have a brain health challenge in their family. So it's hard for them maybe to feel, how can I assist you or sit with you? And I think you hit on such a key point. It's not about fixing someone. It's not about saving them. It's not about swooping in. It's just being able to hold that space and letting them know, I'm here for you, in whatever form that means. And if that means talking, great. If that's listening, great. Or help me understand what your experiences are so I can have greater compassion and empathy for other people that I encounter who may have different life circumstances than my own.
Yeah. One of the pieces that I don't want to forget to touch on, because I think when I heard you talk about this, it was really, really eye-opening for me, and I think it is helpful for viewers to hear this, is that journey of medication.
Yeah.
And so often it's like, okay, I'm going to get on the medication and I'll be fixed. Like everything will get better. And day 2, it's like, things are not better today. And it's actually, some research talks about how suicidal thoughts actually increase in that first 30 days because something that you felt were so hopeful about wasn't the magic answer, that there's a journey to it. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
I'm smiling here because that was my journey.
Yeah.
I remember when I finally, I was diagnosed, or I was prescribed a medicine that, when you read the research, it's supposed to do wonders for people with major depression. And I went into what I called a death spiral. I was taking it and my thoughts got really dark and things just did not feel balanced. It felt even worse. And I remember talking with my parents. Again, I was in my 20s and I talked very openly with my parents about this, and I can't shake these thoughts and I can't shake these feelings. And immediately had to call my psychiatrist to get off of it, and then learn that for that particular medicine there is a certain percentage of people that it does not help. It actually it's an antidepressant that makes depressed people worse.
Sure.
Which then, now you get caught in this vortex of, well, that medicine didn't work, and everyone I know who's on it, or I've seen the ads of people who are smiling and happy and their life has somehow transformed. That's not me. And then you just get deeper into that vortex. I then got on a second med that might as well have just been Tic Tacs. It didn't do anything. There was zero effect. And I got off of that, and then for years later was unmedicated. But the roller coasters never changed. There were still a lot of highs, a lot of lows, a lot of in-betweens. It was the day after my wife at the time told me she was emotionally checked out of the marriage, and I went to my therapist and I said, I need a fix. I need to fix this. I need a solution. Let's talk medicine. And finally found the right SSRI, the right antidepressant at the right dosage. And I could tell that something was changing in my brain chemistry. Now that didn't mean that I didn't have any bad days and everything is wonderful and you're like in the ad where everyone's skipping and jumping and having a great time. It changed my brain chemistry. It shortened the gap, if you will, to allow me to live a more full life, to be more aware of what's happening around me, and less on the roller coaster.
Yeah.
It shortened the bandwidth. I'm still on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
It's more of a kiddie roller coaster than for extreme thrills.
Yeah.
And for me, that's quite all right, because that's where I'm going to be. And then through, we're all impacted by our diet and our exercise and sleep and our environments, and all of those play a role.
Yeah.
This therapeutic, I hope to take the rest of my life. It's taken me a long time to get to that place where the medicine allows me to live in a bandwidth of emotions that allows me to just be me.
Yeah.
And having those supports to lean in on people to say, this therapeutic didn't work, but keep going, was so important, because again, once you get in that vortex, or once you see that other people are excelling, or the medicines that you have to take now have even worse side effects than the previous one, and at some point you're just willing to give up. And I did twice.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful, forever grateful, for all the circumstances that led me to go to that therapy session where they said, well, let's try this therapeutic. And that was the answer.
Yeah. Ben, I appreciate your voice and your story and your journey, and offering such humility and grace to those who oftentimes do feel very alone and isolated in the midst of their journey. I think what you offer to this slice of the universe, and bigger than that, and the influence that you have, is great far and wide. If there were any lasting piece of advice that you would give to those listening who may be struggling right now, what would that be?
Oh, that's an important question. Asking for help was one of the most, I think this term is overused, but for me it was it does take a certain level of courage
It does,
to admit that you have a problem, to ask for help, and then to see it through.
Yeah.
So the courage to say, I need help. What you find is that there is an army of people with open arms ready to embrace you, whether that's you're ready to taking the courageous step to live a sober life or to tackle some brain health issues. What you find is that, one, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And then you become very surprised at how many other people there are out there similar to you. But that asking for help or seeking out help is often the most courageous act you can do, and it is one of the best things you can do. And those two definitely go hand in hand. And for some, it takes years to build up that courage or that sense of I need help, that surrender. I need help. I need to seek out something. I'm not successful this way. I can live a better life if I have the courage to ask for help. And again, that there are so many people that you don't even know who will be there to embrace you. And it's a really wild journey, and one that I look back on, and I'm so thankful I lived in the community that I do, with the supports, with the family, with the tribes of people, but also the courage at some point to say, this has got to change.
Yeah.
And I don't regret that decision. And as I sort of said in the beginning, I'm a complicated person navigating a complex world.
Yeah.
I don't have it figured out, but I'm better able to take on those challenges than I was 7 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I love that piece of advice, because at the end of the day, for those who are listening and maybe struggling, just know that your life matters. Your life mattered. And so to call on our courage and to be brave to ask for that you are worth it. So Ben, thank you so much for being here today.
Cheers, Tanya.
Yes.
Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you.
This needs to be talked about, and wish people well on their journeys. It's an amazing experience, and I'm thankful that there are organizations like Tanager Place who help holistically children and families live a better life. We're a lucky community to have organizations like Tanager Place and people who are willing to share their stories and have access to services. So we're very lucky.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Support is out there.
You're okay, just how you are.
The staff members and the people that I met along the way just made me realize that there are genuine people out there that actually just want to help.
Reach out to somebody.
Will get better. No matter how bad it is. It won't get perfect, it won't go away, but it will get better.
We all have that humanity in common. We can't lose sight of that.
People struggle sometimes. That's okay.
And I had people that showed up for me when I didn't expect it. And I had people who showed up for me at times in my life, and now they're not a part of my life. And that's okay too.
Kind of like to think of it as like some butterfly effect.
No matter the challenges you and your family face, Tanager Place is here for you. We'll meet you wherever you are in your journey, and together define a path to reach your goals. Together we rise. Tanager Place.
Thank you again for joining us today and for spending time with us. We hope today's segment offered hope and healing. Today's series brought to you by Tanager Place and the Meraki Institute of Learning. For more information, please visit our website.